Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We're starting things off with a man who thinks he's entitled to a refund for a burger he ate a month ago. No receipt, no evidence, just unfiltered audacity. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The Ballad of Ken and the Cheeseburger He Couldn't Forget. So I, 31-year-old female, recently started working at a cheeseburger restaurant chain. Not quite fast food, but definitely not fine dining either. Think full sit-down service with burgers, fries, shakes, the works. Since I'm only on my third day, I haven't had the chance to run into many of the classic customer crazies. But today, I witnessed a full-blown Ken saga unfold right in front of me. To be clear, this isn't entirely my story. It mostly belongs to a coworker of mine. Let's call her Jay. She's a teenage girl who works front of house, and since she's still a minor, I'm being careful about what I share about her. But the story comes straight from her, and honestly, it's too bizarre not to tell. When I walked into the restaurant for my shift, I immediately noticed something off. One of our managers, our 20s male, was sitting at a table near the entrance, talking with this older-looking guy, maybe mid-40s to early 50s. The man was dressed in a blue sweatshirt, green sweatpants, black shoes, and a dark beanie. Not exactly threatening, but definitely giving "I've got time to argue today" vibes. Let's call him Ken. R and Ken were having a quiet but tense conversation, which looked just uncomfortable enough that I didn't want to interrupt. I headed behind the counter, clocked in, and that's when I overheard Jay talking to our other manager, A, 38-year-old male, and another coworker, H, 19-year-old female. That's how I got caught up on the backstory. So apparently this all started about a month ago in December. Ken had come in and ordered a burger, fries, and a drink. Nothing fancy, just a regular meal. Jay'd been the cashier that day. He didn't complain, didn't say a word about the food being off, and even tried to tip her with a $10 Walmart gift card. She politely declined it, and he left without any drama. Fast forward 3 weeks later. Ken calls the restaurant out of the blue and starts ranting about how terrible the food was. He said he didn't speak up at the time because he was too nervous and that the meal had made him feel sick. He then demanded a refund over the phone. Keep in mind, this is weeks later and he has no receipt. Jay handed the call off to one of our managers who managed to calm him down enough to get him off the phone, but everyone thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. A week after that phone call, so 4 weeks after the original meal, Ken showed up in person. He walked in and immediately demanded a refund. He claimed that Jay had never given him a receipt, which, even if true, still doesn't entitle him to a refund a month later, and tried to argue his way into free food or cash. That's when R sat him down and listened to the same rambling nonsense Jay had heard on the phone. It was around that time the owner happened to stop by and, after hearing about it, made the call. This guy was getting nothing. R passed the message along, but Ken wouldn't budge. He insisted that he'd been wronged and that someone had to make it right. R stayed professional and firm, and eventually Ken left. For a few hours. Around 3 hours later, right when I was about to leave early because we were a little overstaffed, Ken came back, again this time asking to speak to another manager. A happened to be on duty by then and repeated exactly what R and the owner had said. "You're not getting a refund. The answer is no." I left before I could see what happened next, but at this point, the guy had been told no by 3 different employees, including a manager and the actual owner, and yet he just kept coming back like a broken record with a grudge. Some of my coworkers speculated that Ken might be homeless or dealing with some kind of mental health issue. Personally, I'm not sure. His clothes, while casual, were clean. His face was shaven, and he didn't smell or appear unkempt. He didn't exactly look like someone down on his luck, just someone who really wanted to argue about a cheeseburger he ate a month ago. Maybe he's struggling mentally. Maybe he's just your classic persistent Karen type who can't take no for an answer. Either way, I guess this was my welcome to the world of food service, on day 3 no less. If this is just the beginning, I can only imagine the stories I'll be collecting in the months to come. He sounds like a creep. and upset that Jay rebuffed his advances, so now he's trying to make it everyone's problem. Next time he comes in, tell him that Jay's been fired due to all the fuss about this issue and see how he behaves. And our second story. Make me stay late for not being 15 minutes early? I'll show you how early I can be. I work as a dealer at a casino, and our scheduling system for shift rotations is pretty straightforward, at least on paper. It runs on a first-in, first-out basis, so if you clock in at 7 p.m., you're allowed to leave before someone who clocks in at 8 p.m., assuming there are enough table closures. Totally fair. Now, if several people start at the same time, we use a rotating system for who gets first dibs on leaving. It cycles weekly. If you're first out this week, you're second the next, then third, then back to first, and so on. So one evening, I was scheduled to start with two other dealers, same 7 p.m. shift. Based on our current rotation, I was first out that night. I was actually excited about it since I had plans after work and was counting on that early out. I arrived 10 minutes before my shift, like I usually do, and noticed something odd right away. One of the other two dealers I was scheduled with was already out on the floor, dealing at a table. Curious, I asked around and learned that she'd been pulled from the employee dining room to start 15 minutes early because they needed someone right away. Technically, yes, she started before me, but only by a few minutes, and she just so happened to be third in the rotation that week. 6 hours later, some tables started closing. Finally, it was go-home time. I was ready to grab my stuff when I saw that same dealer walking off the floor being released before me. I was stunned. I flagged a supervisor and said, "Hey, I'm first out tonight. Why is she leaving before me?" "She started before you," he said flatly. "It's policy." And just like that, she flashed a smug little grin at me and walked off without another word. That lit a fire under me. If the new game is whoever clocks in first gets to leave, then fine, game on. Now here's the thing. I don't have kids, pets, or any major responsibilities before work. I'm pretty flexible with my time. That dealer, she had 2 kids and relied on her mom to come babysit before she could leave for her shift. She wasn't early often. Hell, most nights she rolled in just in time, so I saw an opportunity. The next week, I started showing up 2 hours early for every shift. I'd stroll into the casino, grab a coffee, and hang out in the EDR until I was needed. I let the supervisors know I was on site and available to jump in early if needed. They almost always pulled me out to open tables early because why wouldn't they? Free labor sitting in the back, ready to go. That little move kept me in the first out slot for every shift I worked. Didn't take long before the smug dealer noticed. After about a week of staying late while I left early, she started getting noticeably annoyed. One night as I was heading out, she muttered, "It'd be nice to get off before close just once." I just smiled and replied, "Hey, I'm just following policy. You're welcome to show up early too." By week 3, her frustration turned into full-blown rage. She started griping to the other staff, then to management. Apparently the late nights were eaten into her family time and her sleep. But I kept showing up early, clocking in when pulled, and happily walking out ahead of her every single shift. After 5 weeks of complaints, something finally changed. Management called a meeting and announced an adjustment to the policy. From now on, if you want to bump your out time priority, you have to be called in at least an hour before your scheduled start. Clocking in 10 or 15 minutes early wouldn't cut it anymore. The change was clearly aimed at stopping petty little tactics like mine. Did I care? Not at all. I'd already made my point. So was it worth it for her to cut the line that one night? Was it worth clocking in early once just to leave ahead of me? She got to leave 15 minutes early, and in return spent the next month closing late every single night while I waltzed out hours earlier. All because she couldn't help but be smug about gaming the system. She taught me the rules, and I played her at her own game. I'm petty, I'm consistent, and I got way more free time than she does. When a coworker states policy to take advantage of you, it's perfectly fine to use policy to take advantage of them. And our last story. You need to leave me alone. Okay, enjoy your show. Without your car. I work security for a private business campus that rents out venues to outside groups. One of our larger halls was booked by a local church group for a weekend concert, and as usual, we sold tickets through our box office out front. There's only one entrance for the general public, where the exits are numerous, all covered by security cameras. Parking's free in our 3 decks, except for the very clearly marked reserve spaces paid for by one of our major tenants. These reserve spots are active 24/7 and monitored closely. While visitors were still arriving, our dispatch received a call from the tenant company. Someone had parked in their reserve space and they needed it gone immediately. These spots are not suggestions, they're paid for, labeled clearly, and enforced with tows. We pulled the camera footage. A woman in a blinding lime green Sunday dress and a matching hat had pulled into the spot and strutted toward the venue. What caught our attention wasn't just the illegal parking, it was how she bypassed the ticket line and slipped through one of the exit doors just as a cleaner exited. She waited a few minutes to time it right, like she'd done it before. As the on-duty supervisor, I headed inside and found her sitting in the front rows with the group. She saw my uniform and immediately shot me a look like I was a fly that needed swatting. "Ma'am, can I—" "Now I just sat down," she cut in, loud enough for the row behind her to hear. "What is it you want?" "I'm with campus security, and I need to ask—" "What you need to do is leave me alone. I'm sitting with my family, and we're here to enjoy my nephew's concert. There's nothing so important you rent-a-cops need to be bothering me like this." I tried again. "Ma'am, I'm not here about the ticket or how you got in. I don't know what you're talking about, but you need to leave me the hell alone." She was practically shouting by then, avoiding eye contact, full of fake outrage. I smiled and said, "That's all I needed to hear. Enjoy your show." And then I walked out and called the tow company. 2 hours later, she stomped up to our security desk, yelling that her car had been stolen. The desk officer calmly informed her that it had been towed for being in a 24/7 reserve spot and that our log showed we had tried to notify the owner before towing. She demanded to speak to whoever was in charge. That's when I stepped around the corner and said, "Hi there, ma'am. I believe we've met." The silence was instant. She stared at me, lips pressed tight, and I handed her the tow company's info. Since the lot was already closed for the day, she wouldn't be seeing that car again until the next morning. And the fees? Not my problem. This is why it pays to be honest. She lost her car for several hours and paid a bunch of money to get it back the next day. I hope she learned something from this. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.